Hello everyone, my name is Puddy and welcome to TEW Tutorials. Today I'm going to be going over the feature of Figureheads. This was a feature added in TEW 2016 and I think it's a really interesting feature to play around with. I often take a look at this on an infrequent level and see if I can spot ways to exploit this system in the future. But it's important to note before we get started that this feature can be essentially ignored if you want to. The benefits it provide are some slight but obvious benefits to attendance and some major but hard to see benefits to merch sales. So it's some slight financial increases or EP numbers, attendance increases, and if you want to min-max getting kind of the most roleplay historical elements out of it, it's definitely something to look at. But if you don't quite understand the system, it might actually be best to just leave it alone and maybe even remove your current figurehead if it's not going to cause a problem. Because figureheads can have negative influences, and if you don't really understand the system, you're probably not going to get it right. But I do think the system is really fun, and so I think it's important. I think it'd be cool if you haven't yet to just take a look at it a little bit more in depth, which is what we're going to do today. So what does a figurehead need? The three stats, the three specific to the performer's stats that affect the quality of a figurehead are star quality, charisma, and babyface performance. For all three of these stats, I would highly recommend, no matter what promotion you are, that you look to try and get somebody who is around 90 or higher in all of these stats. We'll talk a little later about whether these can be taught and what you should look at for potential future figureheads, but for current figureheads, whether you're a national company or a small company, just for future-proofing sake, and we'll talk about future-proofing a little later, I would highly recommend that star quality, charisma, and babyface performance are 90 or above when you make them your figurehead. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the ability to get and stay over. This is an essential part of a figurehead because you get negatives and bonuses depending on how over your figurehead is compared to the rest of your roster. So what you want in a figurehead, and again, it doesn't matter what company you are, this is top to bottom because you're going to grow so much in the 5-year period that the figurehead is important for, that you are going to want to make sure you have a figurehead that is a long-lasting figurehead. So no matter what company you are, you want your figurehead to be able to get to 100 across your entire country, or just in the regions you cover, I suppose, and make sure they can get to 100 and stay at 100 easily and with minimal effort. This doesn't mean running them in 100 rated menace angles on every single TV show as they slowly creep down to 96. No, they need to stay 100 overness even if they don't appear between pay-per-views. They definitely need to give them a bit of a test. You need to make sure that their pop cap is high enough that you're not going to have any trouble keeping them at 100 pop. So that's in my opinion, that's a necessary thing for a figurehead. You're also going to look for somebody who is young enough to see the benefits. We're going to talk about this a little more later, but I recommend that you appoint a figurehead no later than the age of 28. That's what I always aim for. You will see pretty much the full benefits of a figurehead as long as you appoint a figurehead no later than the age of 28, personally. And finally, the last thing you're looking for in a figurehead is that you will get a big bonus if the figurehead you're looking at is currently a babyface and is going to stay a babyface for a long period of time. You get a slight, it's very negligible, but you get a slight penalty if your figurehead is playing a heel. As long as your figurehead has a strong babyface performance, it's okay. But if he is a babyface now, that's even better. So let's talk about the investment you're going to be putting into your figurehead and how to get the most out of it. So it takes 5 years of being a figurehead to get the most benefit out of the position. The longer somebody is a figurehead, the bigger the bonuses they're going to provide. Therefore, it's probably not worth appointing a figurehead if you're going to replace them within 5 years. And furthermore, the more time you spend after that 5-year period, the more valuable that figurehead is going to be. Because until the 5 years are up, they are not at maximum value. So the most time you spend after that 5-year period, the better. This is why it's important to spot, develop, and appoint your figurehead early into their career. 35 years old is the latest you should be appointing a figurehead. If they're 35 years old, you're looking at them entering time decline before the 5-year period is up. But you should be okay if they're a really promising prospect, someone like Champagne Lover, who is going to have positive business impacts on a number of feds. But even then, it might still not be worth it if you have other better options. This is why I aim for 28. If you aim for 28, or maybe just after, definitely before 30, you're getting 5 years, you've put your full investment in, and then you've still got 3 to 6 more years of a peak performer being your figurehead before they enter time decline, and they start to have a lot of complications keeping them at 100 overness, which, as we mentioned earlier, is quite important. So what can and cannot be taught to figureheads to make them potential figureheads? So charisma can be taught to a certain point, but is capped. Everyone has a certain amount of charisma that will be their maximum. It's very difficult to see this. Obviously, you can kind of see, oh, he's got really high star quality. Generally means he has a high charisma cap as well. Generally speaking, if you play a game long enough, you can get someone's charisma to where it needs to be. Charisma, out of all of the potential stats that you need for a figurehead, is the easiest one to teach. That's why if you're looking for a potential figurehead, you can kind of ignore charisma if they're young enough, because if you put them in the right places, if you put them in dev for a year working on their microphone skills, if you put them cutting promo battles against charismatic people, or in a tag team with a better person, or just cutting promos on their own, the charisma is going to gradually tick up, and it's incredibly easy to get someone to the charisma levels that they need to be at. So that's the easiest stat to look at. There is a cap. You can't just train someone all the way up to 100, but charisma can be taught. Don't worry about it too much. Star quality rarely in this version of the game. It didn't do this in the previous version of the game, but in this version of the game, star quality will rarely gradually improve. There are occasions on certain wrestlers that I have seen star quality improve like a learned skill. However, I think that's very rare. The most common thing you're going to find with star quality is it will jump up when you change weights. So for example, if someone goes down, or more commonly up a weight, they will change their body type, and perhaps that will lead to more or less star quality. This is one of the two hardest stats to quote-unquote teach a potential figurehead. If someone doesn't have around 90 star quality to begin with, I wouldn't consider them a potential figurehead, because it's too difficult to try and push them further up. That's one of those intangibles that you're just going to have to, that's the whole point of finding a good figurehead, is they have to have a certain amount of star quality. Next is Babyface Performance. This also has a cap, but it actually goes up in every segment or match that somebody is playing a babyface. Their performance will go up. So it can be taught, but there's a cap, and there's a lot of peculiarities with that, and I think it's also a new feature in 2016. So make sure you find someone that has at least a reasonable babyface performance already, but it can kind of be taught, so don't worry about it as much as something like star quality. And the final thing is the overness cap. People have overness caps. It happens. There is a certain amount of overness that people are bound to tick towards. Let's say their overness cap is 85. If they're at 90 overness, they will slowly degrade back down to 85 if they're not doing things to keep them at a high overness. This overness cap can be broke. You can get higher than the cap. It happens. In fact, I believe if it's still the same as 2013, you can break it permanently and keep people at 100 overness, even with caps lower than that. But this has varying success, and it's very difficult to change someone's overness cap. This is why this is the joint hardest skill to teach someone. This is why you have to check to make sure that you can get someone over, and you can keep them over before you make them your figurehead. I'm going to go over a few examples in the C-verse of people that make great figureheads at the start of the game, people who make poor figureheads at the start of the game, and a few potential figureheads that are young and potentially have a chance to become figureheads in the future. So I've looked at all of the figureheads in the game, and I've separated them into great figureheads and poor figureheads. So the great figureheads are Jack Bruce. He has all the essentials you need to be a great figurehead. He's with SWF. He's probably the atypical figurehead, or all these guys really are. And he's really great. If you want to look at somebody who's a good figurehead and why, check out Jack Bruce. Similarly, Jack DeCault in Canadian Golden Combat, another sports entertainment fed. He's just the atypical sports entertainment guy. We've got Swoop McCarthy over in Australia with Raw. One of the biggest guys in the industry over there, has all the essentials needed to be a great figurehead. And of course, Champagne Lover, the biggest star in the history of professional wrestling. Why wouldn't he be a great figurehead? He's lacking in a few areas, but they'll get better as the game goes on. And he has, of course, got that amazing star quality. And he's a good babyface too. And he's super fucking over, and it's easy to keep him over. So that's why he's a great figurehead. It pains me to say, Tadayuki Kikawa of Burning Hammer of the Wrestling God is actually, in my opinion, a poor figurehead. The same can be said of Landon Mallory, who I believe works for a European Fed. I can't remember what that stands for, though. They're both people that I would consider to be just bad figureheads. There's not much you can do with them. There's not much you can change about that. If you start off as Burning Hammer or the Fed that Landon Mallory is in, I would unappoint them as figureheads. I don't think they're good enough. They lack mainly charisma, but there are other problems like keeping them over as well. There's another category of poor figureheads. We have Hiroyasu Gakusha, who works for Golden Canvas Grappling. He can, like a lot of people in the second category, he can grow in to be a really good figurehead. He has everything required except for charisma. And as we talked about earlier, charisma is the easiest of these stats to teach. But he needs to learn it, and that doesn't always work. So, and also, while you're teaching him his charisma, you're not having the benefit you could have out of your figureheads. So he's not bad, but he definitely has a lot of growing to do before I would consider him. I would never have appointed him a figurehead, I'll put it that way, until his charisma had gotten a little bit better. And he's a little difficult to keep over as I'd like. Next, we got Rocky Golden. He's in exactly the same position. He's with TCW. He's in exactly the same position. He just needs more charisma for him to be a real figurehead. He can grow into it, but he could also not grow into it. So you got to keep a real eye on him. He might be someone worth an appointing. And then we got Nikki Champion with USPW. Exactly the same position. He just doesn't have the charisma for me to consider him a great figurehead, but of course he could grow into it. And finally, we have a fringe case. We've got Emerald Angel with World Level Wrestling. I like Emerald. I think he's pretty good. He is definitely lacking the charisma, and he also might be lacking the star quality to be a good figurehead. I put him in like a category of his own. He's almost as good as the lads I've said that lack charisma, but he might not quite be a good figurehead even if he had the charisma. So he's kind of on the edge. Next, I'm going to list out a list of people that I came up with using a filter. I think it was excellent star quality, excellent babyface performance, good charisma, and under the age of around 26, I think. So here they are. Here are the people I consider in the game world at the very start who, with enough grooming, not much grooming actually, but with some grooming, could become next big things in professional wrestling and big figureheads for any company. Spencer Spade, for sure. El Hero Mexicano, Fuyuku Higa, High Flying Hawaiian, Jack Avatar, if you're using Jack Avatar, Keanu Owens, Mass Hulk, Nikki Gilbert, Orange Chuchi, can't pronounce that very well. All of this list is going to be in the description, so don't worry about it too much. Razano Komodo, Rokyamon Matsushita, and Scythe. Not all these guys are unsigned, not all these guys are signed, and you might want to look into any of them if you're looking to try out the figurehead feature and you're looking to appoint a new figurehead within the next couple of years instead of playing a company that already has a good one, such as SWF, CGC, Raw, or South of the Border. Alright, that's all I got to talk about with figureheads. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to leave a thumbs up if it's helped you in any way. Leave a comment, let me know if you thought the style was good. I have a couple of plans in the future to continue with these tutorials and make different things. My next planned tutorials would be show ratings and match ratings for Sportsent, and to explain how those kind of get worked out and to give you some hints and tips for getting those up. If you're wanting to do that, I'm open to suggestions. If anyone has anything in TEW they would like explained, or just thought about, then feel free to ask in the comments, and maybe I'll respond to you, or maybe I'll make a video about it. I'm by no means infallible, but I've played this game a lot in this iteration, and I've played a lot of the other iterations for thousands of hours. So I've gleaned a few things. I know how to play the game. I'm not the best, but I know how to play the game. So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. If you did enjoy it, then I'm very glad. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace out, and enjoy your figureheads. Rip Tadayuki Kikawasu. You will be missed.